when the stars went dark. The alert came at 1447 Galactic Standard Time, and Thelnara would remember that moment for the rest of her life. She was reviewing trade agreements in her office aboard the Etherian diplomatic station when every human communication channel went silent at once. Not slowly, not with warnings or explanations. One moment the frequencies hummed with human chatter, their music, their news broadcasts, their endless data streams. The next moment, nothing. Pure, absolute silence where humanity had been. At first she thought it was a malfunction. The Etherians prided themselves on their technology, but even the best systems had glitches. She tapped her console, ran a diagnostic, checked the relay stations. Everything showed green. The equipment was fine. The silence was real. Within the hour, reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The Zenthari Trade Federation confirmed it. The Corvan military outposts confirmed it. The Theshan research stations confirmed it. Every species that had contact with humanity reported the same thing. The humans were gone. Thelnara had studied human history as part of her diplomatic training. She knew about their wars, their chaotic expansion across their corner of the galaxy, their tendency to argue with each other even while cooperating on massive projects. Humans were loud. They broadcast everything. They built relay stations that shouted their presence to anyone who would listen. They sent trade ships to every inhabited system they could reach. They were exhausting, unpredictable, and utterly impossible to ignore. And now they were silent. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session within 6 hours. Thelnara stood in the Great Chamber alongside representatives from 47 different species. The circular room, designed to symbolize equality and unity, felt cold despite the crowd. Fear had a smell, she realized. It cut through the various atmospheric filters and environmental suits. Everyone was afraid, though most tried to hide it. Chancellor Drevoke, a Zenthari with silver scales and centuries of diplomatic experience, spoke first. His voice carried the weight of authority, but Thelnara heard the uncertainty beneath it. We have confirmed the situation. All human communication has ceased. All human ships have either gone dark or are piloted only by artificial intelligence, which refuse to respond to our hails. Human colonies across 73 systems show no signs of activity, though infrastructure remains intact and functional. We have no explanation. Commander Vex, the Corvan military representative, stood next. The Corvans were a warrior species, tall and heavily built, with 4 arms and eyes that could see in multiple spectrums. Vex had fought alongside human soldiers in the border conflicts with the Skrull pirates. He had respect for human combat abilities, which made his next words even more disturbing. I have consulted with our intelligence networks, Vex said, his voice a deep rumble that resonated through the chamber. There were no warnings. No unusual military movements. No distress signals. No signs of attack. If this were an invasion or catastrophe, we would have detected something. But there is nothing. The humans simply vanished. Dr. Kaermoth, a Theshan xenobiologist, approached the central holographic display. The Theshans resembled tall, slender mantises with luminescent patterns on their carapaces. Kaermoth had spent decades studying human biology, psychology, and culture. I must emphasize the scale of this event, she said, her translator rendering her clicks and whistles into common speech. Humanity numbers approximately 42 billion individuals spread across their systems. For them all to disappear simultaneously suggests coordination beyond anything we have observed. This is not random. This is not accident. This is planned. The chamber erupted in discussion. Species spoke over each other, theories flying faster than anyone could track them. Mass evacuation. Plague. Dimensional accident. Religious ascension. Enemy attack. Each theory had advocates and critics. None explained the complete absence of evidence. Thelnara listened and felt a cold certainty growing in her chest. She had negotiated with human diplomats for 20 years. She had watched them argue passionately about everything from trade regulations to philosophical concepts. She had seen them unite when threatened, had witnessed their capacity for sudden, dramatic action when they believed it necessary. Humans did not disappear quietly. Unless they wanted to. She raised her hand, waiting for acknowledgement. Chancellor Drevoke noticed and quieted the chamber. The Etherian representative wishes to speak. Thelnara stepped forward, her blue skin darkening slightly as her emotional state shifted, a biological response she had never quite learned to control. We are asking the wrong questions, she said. We debate what happened to humanity as if they are victims of circumstance. But consider their nature. Consider their history. Humans do not submit to fate. They fight it. They plan. They prepare. What if this silence is not what happened to them, but what they chose to do? Silence followed her words. Then Commander Vex spoke, his tone thoughtful. You suggest this is intentional. That 42 billion humans coordinated their own disappearance. I suggest we cannot rule it out, Thelnara replied. And if I am correct, we need to understand why. What could motivate an entire species to go silent? The council debated for 3 more hours before reaching a decision. They would send an investigative fleet to Earth itself, humanity's homeworld and political center. If answers existed, they would be found there. The fleet assembled quickly. 12 ships from 8 different species, carrying scientists, military personnel, diplomats, and specialists in various fields. Thelnara volunteered immediately and was accepted. Commander Vex commanded the military contingent. Dr. Kaermoth led the scientific team. Together, they departed for human space within 30 hours of the initial silence. The journey took 6 days through faster-than-light transit. 6 days of growing tension as they passed through empty space that should have been filled with human activity. The shipping lanes that humanity had established were ghost roads. The waypoint stations they had built stood silent and abandoned, their automated systems still functioning but no crew present. Supply depots floated untouched in orbit around barren moons. Listening posts broadcast nothing. It was wrong. All of it was wrong. Space felt emptier than it should, as if something vital had been cut out of the universe. They emerged from FTL at the edge of Earth's solar system and immediately went to alert status. Every weapon system powered up. Every scanner ran full sweeps. Every crew member prepared for anything from hostile attack to environmental hazard. Nothing happened. The system appeared normal. Earth rotated peacefully in its orbit. The moon hung in space unchanged. The orbital stations remained in position, lights blinking in regular patterns. Mars colony showed active infrastructure. The asteroid mining operations continued automatically. Everything functioned perfectly. But the scanners showed no human life signs anywhere. Commander Vex studied the readings with increasing confusion. The automated defense systems are active but not responding to our presence. They should be challenging us or firing warning shots. Instead, they are simply inactive. As if waiting. Dr. Kaermoth ran biological scans. I am detecting no human DNA signatures in space or on the stations. None. Not even trace amounts that would indicate recent presence. It is as if they sterilized everything as they left. They approached Earth cautiously, entering orbit with shields raised and weapons ready. The planet looked beautiful from space, swirls of white cloud over blue oceans and brown continents. The night side glowed with city lights in familiar patterns. Everything appeared normal. Landing teams descended to multiple locations simultaneously. New York, Beijing, Mumbai, Lagos, Sao Paulo, Sydney. Major cities on every continent. The teams wore full environmental suits despite scans showing breathable atmosphere. Nobody trusted the situation enough to take chances. Thelnara descended with the team landing in Geneva, where the Human Government Council had maintained its headquarters. The shuttle touched down in a public square designed for such landings. The city stretched out around them, buildings tall and pristine, streets empty but clean. Vehicles sat parked along the roads. Bicycles leaned against racks. Everything in its place. But no people. The team spread out, following standard search protocols. Thelnara entered the nearest building with 2 Corvan soldiers and a Theshan technician. The doors opened automatically, recognizing the motion. Inside they found offices arranged for a normal work day. Computers sat on desks, screens dark but ready to activate. Coffee cups rested beside keyboards, the liquid inside long since evaporated. Pictures of human families decorated workspaces. Plants grew in pots by windows, automated watering systems keeping them alive. In one office they found a meal half-eaten, a sandwich sitting on a plate beside a container of fruit. A jacket hung over the back of the chair. A calendar on the wall showed dates marked with appointments and reminders. Everything suggested someone had simply stood up and walked away midday, planning to return in a few minutes. But they never came back. Reports flooded in from other landing sites. Beijing showed the same pattern. Mumbai showed the same pattern. Every city checked revealed identical situations. Life interrupted but not destroyed. Careful departure, not panicked flight. And nowhere, absolutely nowhere, did they find human remains or signs of violence. By the second day the pattern became clear. The entire human population had evacuated Earth and all their colonies in a coordinated operation of stunning precision. They had taken essential supplies but left infrastructure intact. They had departed simultaneously across dozens of systems. And they had left no clues about where they went or why. Thelnara stood in the Human Government Council chambers on the third day, staring at the empty seats where representatives once debated policy. The room felt like a tomb, preserving a moment in time that would never return. She felt the weight of absence, the echo of billions of voices now silent. Commander Vex approached her, his heavy footsteps loud in the quiet space. My technicians have found something. Power consumption patterns across the planet show unusual readings. Massive electrical draws to specific locations in the days before the silence. Underground locations. Thelnara turned to him, hope and dread mixing in her thoughts. Underground? Yes. The humans built something below the surface. Many somethings based on the power requirements. My teams are tracing the grid patterns now. Whatever they constructed, it is massive. Dr. Kaermoth joined them, her carapace patterns glowing with agitation. This confirms my theory. The humans planned this for a long time. You do not coordinate 42 billion people on impulse. You do not build underground installations overnight. This took years. Perhaps decades. Then we need to see what they built, Thelnara said. We need to understand what drove them to such measures. The investigation teams spread out across the planet, following power lines and scanning for underground structures. What they found in the following days would change everything. Hidden beneath humanity's cities, masked by clever engineering and deliberate deception, lay facilities of a scale that defied belief. Thelnara stood at the entrance to one such facility outside Geneva, staring at a doorway that should not exist. It was disguised as a maintenance tunnel for the city's transit system, unremarkable and easily overlooked. But the scans showed it descending 3 kilometers into the earth, opening into chambers large enough to hold starships. Prepare the equipment, she ordered. We are going down. The team descended into darkness, their lights cutting through the gloom. The tunnel was smooth and precisely engineered, showing the hallmarks of human construction. Emergency lighting flickered on as they passed, activated by motion sensors. The air tasted recycled but breathable, suggesting active life support systems. At the bottom they found doors. Massive doors built to withstand tremendous force. They stood open as if inviting investigation. Beyond them lay a chamber so vast that their lights could not reach the far walls. Commander Vex was the first through the doors. He stopped so suddenly that Thelnara nearly collided with him. Then she looked past him and understood why he had frozen. The chamber was a city. An underground city built with purpose and precision. Buildings rose in organized rows, each one designed for specific functions. Manufacturing facilities, training centers, medical complexes, residential blocks. All of it empty now but clearly recently occupied. The air still carried the faint scent of human habitation. By the ancestors, Vex whispered. This is military. This is a mobilization facility. Dr. Kaermoth scuttled forward, her scanners active. Not just military. Look at the medical complexes. Those are genetic modification centers. And those buildings contain cybernetic integration facilities. The humans were changing themselves. Preparing themselves. Thelnara walked through the empty streets of the underground city, her mind racing. This was not a shelter. This was not a refuge. This was a staging ground. And if one existed here, how many more lay hidden across Earth and human space? Preparing for what? She asked aloud. Nobody had an answer. But as they explored deeper into the facility, finding equipment and technology that pushed the boundaries of known science, one thing became clear. Humanity had not disappeared in fear. They had not run from danger. They had prepared for something, gathered their strength, and gone to face it. And whatever it was terrible enough to unite every human under absolute silence. The silence was not defeat. It was war preparation. And somewhere in the darkness of space, humanity was hunting. Beneath the surface. The discovery of the Geneva facility was only the beginning. Within 48 hours, investigation teams had located similar installations on every continent, and scans suggested dozens more hidden beneath the oceans and polar ice caps. Each facility showed the same pattern, recently evacuated, but maintained in perfect operational condition. The humans had not abandoned their infrastructure. They had preserved it as if they intended to return. Thelnara stood in what appeared to be a central operations room deep within the Geneva facility, surrounded by technology that made her head spin. The walls displayed holographic interfaces in human languages, showing data streams and system diagnostics. Everything still functioned, powered by what Dr. Kaermoth had identified as fusion reactors buried even deeper underground. The humans had built these facilities to survive anything, including the death of the surface world above. Commander Vex worked at one of the terminals, his 4 arms moving with surprising delicacy across the human controls. The Corvins had fought alongside humans enough to learn their systems. "I am accessing their data archives," he said, his voice tight with concentration. "They encrypted everything but not as thoroughly as they could have. It is almost as if they wanted someone to eventually find this. Or they ran out of time," suggested Dr. K.R. Moth. She was examining biological samples from one of the medical facilities, her equipment humming as it analyzed human genetic material. These modification programs were still active when they evacuated. Some procedures were incomplete. Whatever timeline they were working with, something accelerated it. Thelnara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the underground temperature. "Can you break the encryption?" Vex's translator crackled with what might have been a laugh. "Already done. Humans use military-grade encryption, but they also build in backdoors for their own access. Finding those backdoors is simply a matter of understanding how their military minds work. And I have fought beside humans long enough to understand that." The holographic displays flickered and changed. Text appeared in human script, then automatically translated into common speech by the Galactic standard software. What they read made everyone in the room go silent. Project, Midnight Protocol. Classification, Absolute Black. Authorization, Species Survival Level. Species Survival Level? Thelnara repeated softly. "That is not a classification I have encountered before." "Because it is new," Vex said grimly. "They created it specifically for this project. It supersedes all other security classifications, including their nuclear command codes. This was their highest priority." The files continued scrolling. Dates went back 43 years. 43 years of secret construction, coordinated across all human governments and colonies. 43 years of preparation for something they called the Long Night. The budget allocations alone were staggering. The humans had diverted nearly 30% of their entire species' resources into this project while maintaining the appearance of normal civilization above ground. Dr. K.R. Motha's translator clicked with agitation. "This is impossible. You cannot hide an operation of this scale for 4 decades. Someone would talk. Someone would leak information. Human security is notoriously unreliable." "Unless the humans themselves did not know," Thelnara said slowly, studying the organizational charts. "Look at the structure. Each facility operated independently. Each team worked on specific components without understanding the whole. Only the highest leadership knew the complete picture. They compartmentalized their entire species." More files opened. Technical specifications for weapons that should not exist. Designs for ships that incorporated technology beyond current galactic standards. Plans for genetic modifications that would allow humans to survive in environments that would kill them in seconds. Cybernetic integration protocols that would turn ordinary humans into something more. And underneath it all, a single repeated phrase, "Prepare for the dark between stars." "The dark between stars?" Vex said. "What does that mean?" Thelnara was about to respond when Dr. K.R. Moth made a sound of surprise. "I found something." A reference to deep space monitoring stations. Human facilities built in secret beyond the edge of known space, positioned to watch the intergalactic void. "Show me," Thelnara demanded. The hologram shifted, displaying a star map. It showed human space in familiar configurations, but also dots of light in positions that made no sense. Dozens of stations positioned in the empty darkness between galaxies, so far from any civilized system that reaching them would take years of travel. Each station was marked with status reports, data logs, and transmission records. "They have been watching for something," Dr. Karamoth said, her patterns pulsing rapidly with excitement or fear. "These stations have been operating for decades, monitoring the void. And according to these logs, they detected something." Vex pulled up the transmission records. The earliest mentions dated back 37 years. Anomalous readings in the intergalactic void. Energy signatures that did not match any known phenomenon. Movement where nothing should move. The humans had noticed, investigated, and been horrified by what they found. The files included partial transmissions from the monitoring stations. Fragmented messages, heavily encrypted, but now accessible through the backdoors Vex had discovered. Thelnara read them aloud, her voice shaking slightly. Station Omega-7 reporting. Anomalous mass detected approaching from galactic south. Does not match any stellar object. Estimate arrival in local cluster within 40 years. Station Theta-12 confirming. Additional masses detected. Count now 17 distinct objects. Rate of approach increasing. Revising estimate to 35 years. Station Alpha, 1 emergency transmission. We have visual confirmation. Objects are not natural. Repeat, not natural. They are alive. Send all data to Midnight Protocol Command. We may have less time than calculated. The final transmission was dated 6 years ago. All stations confirming. The Void Fleet is definitely heading for inhabited space. Estimated time to Galactic Edge 12 years. Recommend immediate implementation of Midnight Protocol emergency procedures. Humanity must prepare. And we must prepare alone, because nobody will believe us until it is too late. The room fell silent. Outside the facility, the empty city of Geneva waited in the sunlight, peaceful and abandoned. But here, deep underground, the truth of humanity's disappearance was becoming clear. They saw something coming, Thelnara said. Something from beyond the galaxy. And they decided to prepare their entire species for war. Without telling anyone, Vex added. Without asking for help. Without even warning the galactic community. Dr. K-Armoth scuttled between terminals, pulling up more data. Perhaps they tried. These files reference early attempts to share their findings with galactic authorities. Reports filed with the Council. Data sent to scientific institutions. Warnings delivered to military commands. But nobody believed them. Humans were still relatively new to the galactic stage. Their science was considered primitive. Their warnings were dismissed as paranoid fantasies from a young species afraid of the dark. More files appeared. Thelnara saw formal rejection letters from the Galactic Council, polite dismissals from scientific academies, curt responses from military commands. Every attempt humanity made to warn the galaxy was met with skepticism or outright ridicule. After 5 years of trying, the humans stopped asking for help. They started preparing alone. So they built all this, Thelnara gestured at the facility around them. They united every human government under a single purpose. They transformed their entire civilization into a war machine. All in secret because they knew nobody would help them. Vex was studying the military specifications. His trained eye tracked the weapons designs, the ship configurations, the tactical plans. These designs are brilliant, he said quietly. Humans are known for creative warfare, but this exceeds anything they have shown publicly. These weapons are designed to fight something specific. Something they have studied and understood. What kind of enemy requires genetic modification and cybernetics? Dr. K-Armoth asked. What are they preparing to face? The answer came from deeper in the data archives. Files marked with simple names, the Devourers. Thelnara opened them with shaking hands, and what she read made her wish she had not. The monitoring stations had watched for decades. They had studied the things approaching from the void between galaxies. And the humans had learned to fear them with a depth that transformed their entire civilization. The Devourers were not a species. They were not ships or constructs or anything that fit known categories. They were entities that existed in the dark between stars, vast and ancient and utterly hostile to life. They moved through space with purpose, seeking out galaxies with living civilizations. And when they found such places, they fed. The humans had watched them consume 17 uninhabited systems in the void, systems that once held life but now stood silent and dark. They had analyzed the pattern. They had calculated the trajectory. And they had realized with absolute certainty that the Devourers were heading for the populated galaxy. For all the civilized species. For Earth and every world humanity called home. The timeline in the files was precise. The Devourers would reach the galactic edge in 6 years. They would begin their consumption with the outer colonies. They would move inward, feeding on life and light, extinguishing stars and worlds as they came. And nothing in the current galactic arsenal could stop them, because nobody was prepared for enemies that existed beyond normal physics. Except humanity. Humanity had seen them coming. Had studied them. Had prepared. They left because the Devourers are attracted to communication, Dr. K-Armoth said, reading another file. The entities track organized electromagnetic signals. Broadcasting makes civilizations visible to them across vast distances. Humanity went silent to buy time. To hide the galaxy's presence while they moved to intercept the threat. Intercept? Vex repeated. You mean they went out there? They went to face these things. More files confirmed it. Evacuation plans showing movement of the entire human population to classified locations. Fleet assembly coordinates positioned at the galactic edge. A battle line being constructed in space so remote that no civilization had ever explored there. Humanity had not run away. They had run toward the danger, gathering their strength, positioning themselves between the Devourers and everything they wanted to protect. And they had done it all in silence because making noise would doom the galaxy they were trying to save. Thelnara felt her legs weaken. She sat down heavily, staring at the data displays. 42 billion humans had coordinated their evacuation with military precision. Every man, woman, and child from Earth and 73 colony worlds. They had left their homes, their civilization, everything they had built, and marched toward an enemy that terrified them. Because they were the only ones who knew. The only ones who believed. The only ones willing to act. "We have to tell the Council," she said. "We have to warn everyone." "And say what?" Vex asked. "That humanity disappeared to fight invisible monsters in the void? We barely believe it ourselves, and we have seen the evidence. The Council will dismiss it just as they dismissed humanity's warnings decades ago." Dr. Kaermoth was studying the timeline. "According to these files, we have less than 6 years before the Devourers reach inhabited space. Humanity has been preparing for 43 years and they still do not consider themselves ready. What chance does the unprepared galaxy have?" They spent 3 more days in the Geneva facility, copying every file, studying every system, trying to understand the full scope of what humanity had done. Other teams reported similar findings from facilities around the world. The picture became clearer and more terrifying with each discovery. Humanity had transformed itself. They had pushed their technology beyond what they had shown the galaxy, developing weapons based on theories that most civilized species considered impossible. They had modified their own biology to survive in environments where the Devourers existed. They had integrated cybernetics that would allow them to fight in ways that organic beings could not. They had built ships designed not for exploration or trade, but for pure war. And they had kept all of it secret, hidden beneath the surface of ordinary civilization, preparing for a threat that nobody else believed existed. On the 4th day, Thelnara found a locked chamber deep in the facility's command center. It took Vex 2 hours to bypass the security. Inside, they found a single piece of equipment, a holographic projector keyed to activate when opened. It contained a message recorded by someone Thelnara recognized from diplomatic archives. Secretary General Maria Chin, the leader of Human Unified Government. The woman who had guided humanity's secret transformation for the past 20 years. She looked older than her photos, worn by the weight of knowledge and responsibility. But her eyes were clear and her voice was steady. "If you are watching this," Chin said, "then you have found our secret. You know what we saw. You know what we did. And you probably think we are mad or paranoid or both. I understand. We seem mad to ourselves at first. But the evidence does not lie and the threat does not care about our doubts. We tried to warn you. We tried to share our findings to convince the galaxy to prepare. You dismissed us. You laughed at us. You treated our warnings as the fears of a young species that did not understand the cosmos. And perhaps you were right to be skeptical. We would have been skeptical too. But we could not afford to be wrong. So we prepared alone. We united our species under a purpose greater than any of our differences. We built weapons and transformed ourselves and moved our entire civilization to face the darkness that comes. Not because we are heroes. Not because we seek glory. But because someone must stand against the Devourers, and we are the only ones who saw them coming. By the time you find this message, we will be at the galactic edge. We will be building our battle line. We will be positioning ourselves between your worlds and the things that hunger. And we will fight. Not just for humanity but for every species in this galaxy. Because that is what you do when you see the darkness approaching. You stand in its path. I do not know if we will survive. The odds are against us. But we will buy time. We will learn. We will adapt. And perhaps, if we are very lucky and very strong, we will win. Or we will fail and the Devourers will come for you anyway. In which case you need to prepare. You need to believe what we believed. You need to unite as we united. Because the darkness is coming and no one can hide from it forever. We went silent not because we gave up but because we chose to fight. Remember that. Remember us. And prepare. The message ended. Chen's image faded. The 3 investigators stood in silence, processing what they had heard. Finally Vex spoke. "We must return to the council immediately. They need to see this. All of it." "Will they believe us?" Dr. Kaermoth asked. "They must," Thelnara said, standing with renewed purpose. "Because if they do not, humanity will face the Devourers alone. And that is not a burden any species should carry by themselves." They gathered all the data, secured the facility, and returned to the surface. The empty city of Geneva waited above them, silent and peaceful in the sunlight. But Thelnara no longer saw it as a monument to human disappearance. She saw it as a promise. A promise that humans would return, victorious or not, and reclaim the world they had left behind. The fleet departed Earth 3 days later, carrying evidence that would either unite the galaxy or divide it further. Either way, time was running short. Somewhere at the edge of known space, humanity was building its battle line. And somewhere beyond that edge, in the cold dark between galaxies, the devourers were coming. The silence had ended. Now came the storm. The return. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so full. Representatives from every known species crowded the space, standing in groups when the seats ran out. Word of the discovery on Earth had spread through official channels and gossip networks with equal speed. Everyone wanted to hear what the investigation team had found. Everyone wanted answers. Thelnara stood at the central podium, flanked by Commander Vex and Dr. Kaermoth. Above them, holographic displays showed the evidence they had gathered. Empty human cities. Underground facilities. Secret files. Weapons that should not exist. And the monitoring station data showing something approaching from the void. Chancellor Drevoke called for silence. His silver scales caught the light as he gestured to Thelnara. Present your findings. She took a breath and began. For 2 hours she spoke, laying out everything they had discovered. She showed the data. She played Secretary General Chen's recorded message. She presented Dr. Kaermoth's analysis of the human genetic modifications and Vex's assessment of their military preparations. She held nothing back, knowing that partial truth would be worse than complete disclosure. The chamber erupted before she finished. Some species demanded to see more evidence. Others called the entire story a fabrication. A few suggested that humanity had manufactured the threat to justify their militarization. The Zenthari trade representatives worried about economic impacts. The Corvan military leaders wanted to send fleets to the galactic edge immediately. The Theshan scientists argued about the physics of entities existing in intergalactic void. Thelnara waited for the noise to subside. When it did not, she did something unprecedented. She overrode the chamber's audio controls, cutting off everyone's translator feeds except her own. In the sudden silence, her voice rang out clearly. 42 billion humans did not vanish on a whim, she said, her tone sharp with frustration. They did not spend 43 years and unimaginable resources preparing for nothing. They tried to warn us. We dismissed them. Now they are out there alone, building a battle line to protect all of us from a threat we refuse to acknowledge. And we stand here debating whether to believe the evidence in front of our eyes. She reactivated the translator feeds. I am taking a ship to the coordinates humanity provided. I am going to see their battle line with my own eyes. I am going to offer whatever help the Etherians can provide. Anyone who wishes to join me is welcome. Anyone who wishes to remain here and debate can do so. But I will not stand idle while humans face extinction protecting a galaxy that would not believe them. The chamber fell silent. Then Commander Vex stood. The Corvan military will send a battle group. Not to fight, not yet. But to witness. And to stand with humanity if their threat proves real. Dr. Kaermoth rose next. The Theshan research fleet will accompany you. If these devourers exist, we must study them. We must understand them. Science does not progress through denial. One by one, other representatives stood. Not all of them. Perhaps not even most of them. But enough. Enough species willing to investigate rather than dismiss. Enough military forces to make a difference if combat came. Enough scientists to analyze what they found. Chancellor Drevoke watched the responses with his ancient eyes. Finally he spoke. I cannot commit the Council to action based on evidence that many question. But I will not prevent those who choose to investigate. Go to these coordinates. See what humanity faces. And report back what you find. Then we will decide how to proceed. It was not a victory, but it was enough. Thelnara bowed formally and left the chamber. Behind her, groups formed as species willing to send ships began coordinating their efforts. By the time she reached her diplomatic vessel, 12 species had committed forces to the expedition. Not the entire galaxy, but a start. The journey to the coordinates took 19 days. 19 days of preparation, training, and planning for what they might find. 19 days of doubt and fear and hope mixing in equal measures. The fleet that traveled together numbered 67 ships from 12 species. It was not a military force, not really. It was a gesture. A statement that humanity would not face the unknown alone. They emerged from FTL at the specified coordinates and found themselves at the edge of everything. No stars illuminated this space. No planets orbited nearby. They hung in the darkness between the spiral arms, where stellar density dropped to near zero. It was the frontier of mapped space, the boundary beyond which lay only void. And humanity had built a city here. Thelnara stared at the displays in disbelief. The battle line stretched across 10,000 kilometers of space. Hundreds of ships, maybe thousands, positioned in coordinated formations. But that was not what shocked her. Between the ships, humanity had constructed something unprecedented. Massive platforms connected by energy bridges. Weapons batteries that made planetary defense systems look like toys. Shield generators creating overlapping fields of protection. Manufacturing facilities building more ships even now. Living habitats housing millions of humans. They had built a floating fortress at the edge of the galaxy. In less than 6 years, humanity had created a defensive position that rivaled the greatest military installations in civilized space. And they had done it all in secret, in darkness, preparing for a threat that nobody believed existed. By all the ancestors, Vex whispered, his 4 hands gripping the edge of his command console. This is not a battle line. This is a wall. They mean to hold this position no matter what comes. Dr. Kaermatha's patterns flickered rapidly. The energy readings are enormous. Those platforms are powered by artificial singularities. Humans contain black holes to power their weapons. That should not be possible. Thelnara opened communication channels. This is the Etherian diplomatic vessel Luminous Dawn, leading a coalition fleet from 12 species. We have come to investigate humanity's claims and offer assistance if needed. We request permission to approach. Silence answered for long moments. Then a human voice responded, speaking common speech with the flat, controlled tone of someone who had seen too much and felt too little. Luminous Dawn, this is Fortress Command. We read your transponders. 12 species, 67 ships. That is more than we expected and fewer than we need. You are cleared to approach Platform 7 Alpha. Docking bays are prepared. But be advised you are entering a war zone. The Devourers are 48 hours out, and we are going to combat stations shortly. 48 hours. The words hit like physical blows. The Devourers were not theoretical. They were not distant. They were coming and they were almost here. The fleet approached the platform slowly, following human navigation guides. As they drew closer, Thelnara saw details that made the scope of human preparation even clearer. Automated mining drones harvested resources from captured asteroids. Fabrication ships transformed raw materials into new weapons and armor. Medical vessels stood ready to receive casualties. Supply chains moved equipment and personnel with mechanical efficiency. And everywhere humans. Humans in combat armor. Humans in void suits. Humans integrated with cybernetics that made them more machine than organic. Humans with eyes that had seen things that changed them. They moved with purpose, with grim determination, with the bearing of soldiers who knew they might not survive but would fight anyway. The landing platform could have held 10 ships the size of Thelnara's vessel. Currently, it held components for what looked like a weapon large enough to crack planets. Human workers swarmed over it, welding, wiring, testing. They barely glanced at the alien ships landing nearby, too focused on their work to care about visitors. Thelnara emerged from her ship with Vex and Kaermath behind her. The platform's artificial gravity felt slightly heavier than standard, making her movements sluggish. The air tasted of metal and recycled organics. Everything was functional, efficient, and utterly focused on war. A human approached them. He wore the uniform of a high-ranking officer, his chest marked with insignia that Commander Vex recognized from his time fighting beside human forces. But this man looked decades older than his probable age, his hair gray, his face lined with stress and exhaustion. His eyes were the worst part. They held the weight of knowledge that nobody should carry. I am Admiral Marcus Torres, he said, his voice matching the flat tone from the earlier transmission. Commander of the 1st Fleet Earth Defense Force. Secretary General Chen asked me to meet with you personally. She will join us shortly, but she is currently coordinating defensive positions for the engagement tomorrow. Tomorrow? Thelnara repeated. Your earlier transmission said 48 hours. That was optimistic, Torres replied. Our long-range sensors detected acceleration in the Devourer Vanguard 30 minutes ago. They have increased speed significantly. We now estimate first contact in 27 hours. Please follow me. We have much to discuss and very little time. He led them through corridors filled with human soldiers, past armories stocked with weapons, through medical bays prepared for mass casualties. The fortress hummed with activity, every person focused on their assigned task. This was not panic. This was not fear. This was professional military preparation by a species that had trained for this moment for decades. They entered a command center that overlooked the battle line. Holographic displays showed the entire defensive position in detail. Thousands of ships in formation. Weapons platforms charged and ready. Shield networks at full power. And beyond it all, the dark of the void where something approached. Secretary General Chen stood at the center of the chaos, directing operations with calm authority. She looked even older than her recorded message, aged by years of carrying impossible responsibility. But when she turned to face the alien delegation, her expression softened slightly. "You came," she said simply. "I did not think anyone would." "We came to witness," Thelnara replied. "We came to understand. And if your threat is real, we came to help." Chen's smile was sad. "It is real. You will see that soon enough. The question is whether you will stay when you do see it. Whether you will stand with us. Because I must be honest with you. We are not confident of victory. We have prepared as best we could. We have built weapons and modified ourselves and trained for 4 decades. But we do not know if it will be enough." "Then why fight?" asked one of the Zenthari representatives who had accompanied them. "Why not evacuate further? Buy more time? Warn the galaxy and prepare together?" Chen's expression hardened. "Because the Devourers are attracted to communication. Every signal we broadcast draws them faster. If we warn the galaxy, if everyone began transmitting emergency messages and coordinating responses, we would simply speed their arrival and help them target every inhabited world. Silence buys time. Fighting buys more." She gestured to the holographic displays. "We have positioned ourselves at the galactic edge to intercept them here, far from inhabited systems. If we fail, the Devourers will continue inward. They will reach the outer colonies in 3 years. They will reach core worlds in 7. And they will not stop until they have consumed every living thing in this galaxy. So we fight here. We hold here. Because this is the best position we will ever have, and retreat only gives them easier targets." "What are they?" Dr. Kaermoth asked. "What are we facing?" Chin pulled up sensor data. "We are not entirely sure. They exist in states that violate known physics. They are partly energy, partly matter, partly something else we have no terms for. They feed on life and light, absorbing everything they touch. They are intelligent in ways that seem alien even by galactic standards. And they are absolutely hostile to all biological life." The displays showed images captured by the monitoring stations. Vast shapes moving through the void. Forms that hurt to look at, that seemed to shift and change depending on the angle of observation. Dark spots in space that consumed starlight and left nothing behind. "How many?" Vex asked, his military training focused on tactical assessment. "The Vanguard consists of 17 entities," Chin replied. "Each one measures between 3 and 7 kilometers in length. Behind them, our long-range sensors detect hundreds more. Possibly thousands. We are not facing an invasion fleet. We are facing a migration. They are coming in force, and our battle line stands between them and every living world in the galaxy." Silence fell over the command center. The weight of that knowledge pressed down on everyone. Humanity had taken on an impossible task. They had positioned themselves to face extermination, protecting species that had dismissed their warnings and refused to help. "What can we do?" Thelnara asked quietly. Chin studied her for a long moment. "Your ships are not equipped for this fight. Your weapons are not designed for these enemies. Your crews are not trained for this combat. But your presence matters. When we engage the Devourers, we will broadcast the battle to our monitoring stations with orders to transmit it to every inhabited system if we fall. The galaxy needs to see what is coming. Needs to understand what we faced. Needs to prepare if we fail. Having witnessed ships from other species adds credibility to that transmission." "You expect to die," Kaermoth said. "We expect to fight," Torres corrected. "Death is simply one possible outcome. But yes, we are prepared for it. Every human here volunteered for this mission. We knew the odds. We came anyway." The next 27 hours passed in a blur. The coalition fleet positioned themselves behind the human battle line, close enough to observe but far enough to survive the initial engagement. Thelnara watched as humans made final preparations, running through combat drills one last time, checking weapons, saying goodbyes to loved ones over communication channels. She saw soldiers who could not have been more than 20 years old, who had spent their entire adult lives training for this battle. She saw families serving together, parents and children side by side in the defense of their species. She saw humans who had modified themselves so extensively that they barely looked human anymore, their bodies adapted for survival in conditions that would kill unmodified people instantly. And she saw the unity. Every human moving in coordination toward a single purpose. No debates, no political divisions, no personal conflicts that mattered more than the mission. Humanity had transformed itself into something new, something forged by shared purpose and common cause. The Devourers arrived exactly on schedule. The sensors detected them first. Energy readings that spiked beyond measurement scales. Mass signatures that made no sense. Movement patterns that suggested intelligence and coordination. The human crews went to battle stations with practiced calm, thousands of people executing procedures they had drilled countless times. Thelnara watched the displays as the Devourers came into visual range. Nothing could have prepared her for what she saw. They were darkness given form. Vast entities that seemed to absorb light and reality itself. They moved through space like predators, graceful and terrifying, approaching the human battle line with what might have been curiosity or hunger or something that combined both. 17 of them. Each one large enough to engulf multiple ships. Each one radiating wrongness in every scanner reading. They spread out as they approached, forming a line of their own that matched the human defensive position. Testing. Evaluating. Preparing. Then they attacked. The first Devourer accelerated suddenly, crossing thousands of kilometers in seconds. Human weapons opened fire immediately. Energy beams, kinetic projectiles, exotic particles that Thelnara had no names for. The attacks hit the Devourer and seemed to pass through it, to be absorbed, to simply disappear into the darkness it embodied. But the humans adjusted. Secondary weapons fired, these ones different. Weapons based on theories Thelnara did not understand, that seemed to hurt reality itself to hurt the Devourers. The entity recoiled, its form flickering, damaged but not destroyed. The battle exploded across the entire line. All 17 Devourers engaged simultaneously, and humanity answered with everything they had built. Ships maneuvered in perfect coordination. Weapons platforms fired in synchronized patterns. Shield networks flared and held against attacks that should have shattered them. Humans died, ships were destroyed, but the line held. Thelnara watched in awe as humanity fought. They adapted in real time, analyzing each Devourer's behavior, adjusting tactics, coordinating across thousands of ships with the precision of a single organism. This was what they had prepared for. This was what 4 decades of secret work had built toward. The battle lasted 17 hours. 17 hours of sustained combat at an intensity that should have broken any military force. Humans died by the thousands. Dozens of ships were destroyed. Entire sections of the battle line went dark as Devourers consumed them. But humanity kept fighting, kept adapting, kept holding their position. And slowly, impossibly, they began to win. The first Devourer died 3 hours into the battle. Human weapons found a pattern that worked, a combination of attacks that could actually kill the entities. The dark form flickered, writhed, and finally dissolved into nothing, leaving only empty space where it had been. A cheer went up across the human fleet, quickly silenced as commanders redirected attention to the remaining threats. By hour 7, 4 Devourers were dead. By hour 12, 9. The remaining 8 began to retreat, pulling back from the human line, their coordinated assault broken by losses they apparently had not expected. Humanity pursued relentlessly, not allowing them to regroup, not giving them time to adapt as humans had adapted. When the battle finally ended, only 2 Devourers escaped back into the void. 15 lay dead in space, their forms slowly dissipating as whatever sustained them failed. The human fleet was battered, a third of their ships destroyed, tens of thousands dead. But the line had held. The galaxy's edge had been defended. And humanity had proven that the Devourers could be killed. Thelnara stood in the command center, tears streaming down her face, watching as human crews began rescue operations and damage control. Secretary General Chen sat in her command chair, looking like she had aged another decade in the past day, but her eyes held something they had not before. "Oh, you did it?" Thelnara whispered. "You actually did it." Chen turned to her and for the first time showed emotion. "We bought time. Nothing more. The vanguard is broken, but more Devourers are coming. This was just the first battle. The war has only begun." "Then you will not fight it alone," Vex said firmly. "I am transmitting full battle data to Corvin Military Command with my recommendation that we commit our fleets immediately. What I have witnessed here proves that you spoke truth, that the threat is real, and that humanity knows how to fight it." Dr. Kaermoth was already analyzing the Devourer remains. "This data is invaluable. With this, we can develop weapons. We can teach other species. We can build a real defense." One by one, the coalition representatives pledged support. Ships, weapons, personnel. Everything their species could spare. The battle had been witnessed. The evidence was undeniable. And across the galaxy, as transmissions of the engagement spread, other species began to believe. Humanity had gone silent to prepare for war. They had faced the darkness alone because nobody else would stand with them. But they had held the line. They had proven the threat was real. And now, finally, the galaxy was ready to listen. Thelnara looked out at the battle line, at the damaged ships and the memorial markers for the fallen. "You saved us," she said to Chin. "You bought us time to prepare. Time to unite. Your silence saved the galaxy." Chin shook her head slightly. "We did what we had to do. What anyone would do when they see danger coming. The only difference is we saw it first." She stood, straightening her uniform. "Now comes the harder part. Teaching the galaxy to fight as we fight. Building weapons that can kill devourers. Preparing every species for what is coming. We have months, maybe a year before the main force arrives. We must use that time well." In the following weeks, everything changed. Human silence ended as they shared their knowledge, their weapons, their tactics. Ships from dozens of species began arriving at the galactic edge, adding to the battle line. Scientists studied the devourer remains and developed new weapons. Military forces trained together, learning from human experience. The fortress at the edge of the galaxy grew larger, stronger, more diverse. Where humanity had stood alone, now a coalition formed. Species that had never cooperated before worked side by side, united by common threat and common purpose. Earth remained empty, preserved as humanity had left it. But the humans themselves were different now. Hardened by war, changed by what they had seen and done. When they eventually returned home, they would return as warriors who had saved the galaxy. Not because they sought glory or thanks, but because they had seen the darkness approaching and chosen to stand against it. The silence had ended. The battle had begun. And humanity, once dismissed as young and paranoid, now led the galaxy's defense against the void that hungered. The devourers were coming in force. But they would find not a divided galaxy of unprepared species, but a united front, taught and led by humans who had prepared for exactly this war. The darkness was coming. But the galaxy was ready. And at the center of that readiness stood 42 billion humans who had given up everything to buy the time needed for preparation. Their silence had been the loudest warning possible. And now their return would be the galaxy's salvation. The war for survival had begun. And humanity, the species that refused to surrender to fate, would show the galaxy what it meant to fight for existence itself.